Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came to the attention of government authorities in the United States in the early 1990s and is described in parts 1 and 2 of this series. Ongoing Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA litigation, has turned up some interesting FBI records, all of which are visible on plain sight. But FOIA is just one tool in the toolbox for investigative journalists. Sometimes the best way to learn something is to go to the place where it actually happened. The Chicago Regional Branch of the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, is housed in a white building that looks like something between a set of circus tents and a vision of the future from the 1960s, which at this point looks rather dated. But the warehouse that actually holds the documents it keeps looks pretty much like any other warehouse, big and rectangular, except that this one is next to a small military outpost with rows of camouflage jeeps nearby. Incredibly, across the street is the same college Bola Tinubu attended in the 1970s, now called Richard J. Daley College. The court records from the 1992 criminal case from the Gary, Indiana drug ring led by Lee Andrew Edwards, for which Bola Tinubu laundered money, reside in 4 boxes in that warehouse. That case went to appeal more than once at the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, after which the records were returned to the district court in the Northern District of Indiana. Decades later, they were sent to the National Archives warehouse in Chicago, Illinois. The Indiana criminal court case didn't name Bola Tinubu as a defendant, and it didn't even mention him once in the papers. But it resulted from the same FBI investigation that later swept up Tinubu and his Nigerian co-conspirators, and there was a lot of useful context that could therefore appear in the documents, none of which were available online from the court. The only way to obtain them was to go to Chicago, make an appointment with NARA, reserve the one overhead Fujitsu ScanSnap scanner designed to never need to touch the original pages, and start scanning. 4 boxes may not sound like a lot, but with each box holding about 2,500 pages, it's a considerable amount of paper. A day of scanning might yield 500 pages, so it would only take about 3 weeks to scan every page in each box. A better option was to only scan the pages that were most important. The first box happened to contain one of the most interesting sets of documents, the transcript of the trial in Indiana, which had to be compiled and entered into the record for the Seventh Circuit appeals. The transcript did mention Abiodun Nagbele and his link to Nigerian heroin a number of times, but there was an even more interesting second set of documents in one of the boxes that was surprising to find filed in court, records from the FBI investigation itself. The prosecutors had decided to enter as evidence transcripts of the telephone calls that the FBI had monitored thanks to the numerous Title III wiretaps they had obtained. The calls mostly concerned transactions for drugs, but the records were remarkable for a different reason. There were no redactions. While FOIA documents are often redacted, sometimes to the point of absurdity, these documents were not being produced via FOIA. They were simply sitting in a box from the court case. Thanks to the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, anyone could read them. The information at the bottom of each FBI Form FD-302 in these boxes was a missing puzzle piece no one even knew to look for. Each form had a file number field in which the FBI had recorded not just the main file number, but also the sub-file numbers for what appeared to be each individual or topic connected to that recording, an early version of tagging. It seemed that sub-file numbers began at A and continued as long as there were people to categorize, starting over at AA and then AAA and so on. This was interesting because the tipster who provided the FBI file number to request about Bola Tinubu had specified FBI file number IP 71386 UUU in what seemed like a joke at the time. Now it appeared that that was Bola Tinubu's specific subfile in the sprawling file for the overall FBI investigation, which spanned multiple continents and had seen the case number itself change multiple times as a result. The metadata at the bottom of each page also noted the names of the special agents assigned to each recording, which were being redacted through the FOIA process. The fact that these were already publicly disclosed in the 1990s, if you could find them, meant that there might be a chance of removing those FOIA redactions as well. One name in the trial transcript in particular stood out, Special Agent Karen Pertuso. At various other points in her testimony, however, her name seemed to have changed. The pages described testimony from Agent Robert Pertuso instead. As it turns out, there were actually 2 Agent Pertusos on the case. They were a married couple. Much later in their careers, according to the Washington Post, this practice of both of them working together on the same case landed the FBI and each of them in hot water, and they retired from the FBI as a result. In the National Archives boxes, there were also a few interesting procedural documents from the 1992 criminal court case. One noted the history of how the case was prosecuted by the United States Department of Justice, and seemed to leave open the possibility that it was not the only court case to come out of the FBI's investigation, but rather the only one that anyone could see. ECF number 602, filed March 29, 1994, stated that, quote, "On July 2, 1992, the U.S. Attorney's Office received from the FBI a prosecutive report regarding the Lee Edwards drug trafficking organization. The report was 6,469 pages in length. Yet the FBI had indicated previously in the FOIA litigation that it found only 2,500 responsive pages. What happened to the other 4,000? There was even a photocopied photograph of Edwards from a prior conviction in Indiana, also for selling drugs. But by far the most interesting piece of information was the revelation that Abiodun Agbele had actually been indicted by the Department of Justice in the early 1990s, except that the indictment was under seal. A search of Pacer today reveals no such records. Yet, the court documents spell it out in black and white. Former DEA Special Agent Vincent Balbo, now a police chief in Indiana, admitted under oath that he had assisted with the indictment. The visit to the National Archives had turned up more clues than expected, but there was one last place to visit in Chicago, the federal courthouse in a black glass skyscraper downtown, which houses the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. There, on a public terminal, were the original scans of the court documents from Bola Tinubu's 1993 civil forfeiture case, not the grainy fake-looking scans that had been posted by Sahara reporters. Since the original scans of the documents are restricted on Pacer to the federal courthouse in Chicago due to a March 2011 judicial conference policy that restricts the availability of scanned documents from archives, they are now reposted on PlainSight for everyone to view, even the government attorneys in the FOIA lawsuit who previously claimed that even they couldn't view them. In early March 2024, the FBI claimed that it had produced all of the documents it could find regarding Lee Andrew Edwards and his drug ring, for which Bola Tinubu laundered money. A year and a half after first receiving FOIA requests regarding Edwards and Tinubu, the United States government still wasn't willing to admit what it had already put into the public record 30 years before, that Nigeria's president is a money launderer and, based on the sealed indictment of Abiodun Agbele, also likely an indicted criminal. The chances that prosecutors decided to indict Agbele for his involvement in the ring, but not Tinubu, are extremely low. What's more, Tinubu has never denied that he was indicted, just that he was not charged criminally in a civil case, which is meaningless. For now, governments on both sides of the Atlantic are still fighting to keep Tinubu's history a secret, but the truth is already crystal clear. The implications of what amounts to a cover-up by two governments are serious. How could someone who committed so many felonies be elected president of a country without anyone realizing it? Why is it the policy of the United States not to discuss that already partially documented history? To what extent is the intelligence community involved? Is American foreign policy actually effective in this regard? One day soon, hopefully we'll all be able to read the full details for ourselves.